We will get back to markets in a bit and to that clarification as and when it comes. Ravi Uppal, Managing Director of JSPL, joins us as promised. Mr. Uppal, thanks much. If you can take us through the impact on your company itself of this equalizing the status between customs duty on steam coal and customs duty on bituminous coal. Does it immediately have an impact? Do you import any coal at all? Or will it shortly have an impact when your expansions get underway?
Before I make a comment on the individual custom duties, let me first say that the budget which was presented yesterday is basically a moderately pleased all kind of budget. Of course, the finance minister, stayed within the parameters of what he had said earlier, that he wants to maintain stability, he wants to build trust, he wants this to be inclusive budget, and of course, there was a lot of cheer for the banking and insurance sector because he focused a lot on their expansion and growth. But when it comes to the manufacturing sector, there are two, distinct things which he mentioned, which were quite favorable to the power industry and the steel industry. Number one, the 15% investment allowance that he announced. I think that was indeed a very welcome move, and the period for which he's allowed it is a period of 2 years. So I think that will definitely be an impetus for making more investments within the steel sector as well as the power sector. And the second thing, that the power sector extending the tax holiday for a period of 1 more year, I think was really a much needed relief. As you know, that the power projects which are under execution, they've been seriously beset due to shortage of coal and many input materials, including land and environmental issues. So if you give them 1 more year's extension, it's some amount of relief for them to wrap up their projects and get them on stream. So these were the positive ones. The ones where I thought that he could have done more was to stimulate more sort of investment into the sector. The sectors has not been putting more money into it for want of demand, and the demand is not there. The supply situation is not improving. I was really wanting, I know that it's a period of just 2 hours in which he has to make the statement, but he could have at least announced among other intentions that it did. The government is working very seriously to bring down the lending rates. Until the lending rates are improving, I think there are not many people who are willing to come forward, to make more investments. So I think that's one of the issues which caused me a lot of concern, that nothing was stated even in terms of intent. Now, as for custom duties, which you're asking about, I think, the very small cosmetic changes have been done. Reducing the duty on the bituminous coal and putting the duty on thermal coal, is not much of a change. Of course, thermal coal, as you know, that it is used for the power plants and is also used in a moderate quantities in the steel making. So increasing the duty on that was uncalled for. As it is, the imported coal works are so expensive, and if you put more duties on that, duty and CVD, that makes the job even tougher. So that was uncalled for. And any reduction of bituminous coal, whose quantity requirement is as it is pretty modest from the steel industry point of view, is not much of a relief. So I don't think that any kind of changes made on these two coals are a matter of great consequence for the steel as well as the power industry.
Mr. Uppal, good afternoon and thanks for joining in. How much coal does Jindal Steel and Power import, if at all, and how much comes from captive coal mines? And going ahead, because you have some expansion plans on the cards, will you have to increase the amount of imported coal?
Well, it's like this, that, we are commissioning new power plants, we are commissioning new steel plants. We are already importing certain grade of coal from our own mines in South Africa, which we call as a anthracite coal, which is basically used for purpose of making steel. So, and we have now opened our Mozambique mine, from where we will be mining the hard coking coal. So we will definitely sort of bring that coal in to meet our internal requirement of coking coal. But when it comes to the thermal coal importing for the power projects, our import volumes will be very much linked with how much of capacity that we sort of build up. And of course, we are always comparing the cost of imported coal against the cost of procuring coal locally. So depending as to how the tariffs move in future and what kind of projects we undertake, we will decide the quantum of the coal that we are going to import.
You have fairly aggressive expansion plans as well, inorganic expansion in Australia. also with respect to Gujarat and Nari coking coal. Given that your finance costs have started rising rather sharply, will you be able to maintain this kind of an interest in acquisition in inorganic moves?
Well, we have said on previous occasions that we're always searching for minerals because they are a critical input to whatever business we do, whether it is steel or power. So for us, the need is indispensable. And we always keep looking for options from where we can, source coal or iron ore of acceptable quality at a minimum cost. So we don't get fixed or rigid on any option that we look at. We are constantly sort of optimizing them in a dynamic setting.
The reason we ask, Mr. Uppal, is because, in your power business, anyway, your margins have gotten restricted a whole lot to about 50% plus versus the 60% that you guys were sitting on earlier. Because of this duty increase on steam coal, how much do you think it will push up electricity tariffs in general for the industry? And would it have any further impact on your margins in due course of time?
Well, let's not mix two things. The kind of coal that we need for steel is different from the kind of coal that we need for power. Power coal is called thermal coal, whereas the kind of coal that we need for steel making process will either be hard coking coal or anthracite. And these are two completely two different tracks. Most of the coal that we are using at this point of time for our power plants is basically sourced within the country. But as we go for our expansion plans in future, we will, in the first instance, try to source the coal locally because that's the one which you get at a much lower cost than any imported option. But if we are, put against the wall and we find there's no way that we can get local coal, despite the best of our efforts, then we are going to look at the imported option. The good thing with the imported option is that the gross calorific value of that coal is far superior compared to the coal that we get in India. So what we do is we basically compare the cost of sourcing coal on a per kilocalorie basis, the imported option against the domestic option. But I will still say that we will remain very keenly focused to see how much coal we can get within the country. Yesterday, the finance minister has announced a new initiative. He has suggested that, the Coal India will also go into, the PPP or with the local miners. I haven't had the chance to read the fine print of this announcement and the facts behind it, but I think it's a positive development in the next 3 to 4 years. It will help to improve the availability of power, of the power grade coal within the country. Because it's not that we don't have coal, it's just that we are not able to mine it and move it around in the volumes that we need. So therefore, the PPP idea, I'm sure, will spur the growth of the mining grade of coal.
Okay, very quick final question, Mr. Uppal. For the past 12 months, or maybe more, maybe even less, past 10 months, the government has been taking assiduous efforts on the coal front, on the power front, as well as, the investment allowance. Bits and pieces of action have been taken. Are you seeing the capex cycle returning anytime soon, or anytime in 2013? Or at least are mothballing of projects stopping, people walking away from projects or shelving them altogether? Anything positive on the capex front?
Well, I must first say that the government in the last 12 months has made laudable effort to see the issue relating to coal get addressed seriously. They try to bring all stakeholders together, and a lot of ground has been covered. Government is coming with policy with regard to the imported coal and is blending with the local coal. I think there's some rapid movement. But having said that, I must say that we lost 2 precious years' time between 2010-11 to 2012-13 for addressing the issues of the coal-based power industry. So that, it's very difficult to recover that time. And the net result is that if you look at the year 12-13, there are hardly any power projects which have taken off the ground from the IPP sector. Because the community of IPPs is seriously disillusioned. They find that they have a risk element on every front they touch, whether it's about land acquisition, getting water, getting fuel, and not to forget getting the environment and forest clearance. The government has moved now very decisively to see how some of these problems can be addressed, and I can already acknowledge that some movement has taken place, but I believe that it's going to take at least another 12 to 18 months so that people can sort of get a positive sentiment again and gain the confidence that they lost in the merits of investing in the power sector. So I think there will be a bit of a lag here, but let us work assiduously and not get carried away how much investment is made in power sector in the next 6 months' time. The power sector in India is very precariously placed. We constantly underestimate the amount of power required. I feel very amused, being a power engineer myself, when people tell me that the peak time shortage is 12% and the base load shortage is 8%. I think all these people who make this claim, they don't seem to understand that there's so much latent demand which is waiting to happen if the power becomes available. Power is one industry where the demand follows supply. So I think this is something people must understand. We have a huge pent-up demand, but it's not being articulated. We are trying to decide the amount of power required based on the amount of load shedding that we do. So and that's not the right criteria in my thinking.
Fair enough, sir. These are huge fundamental issues. Thanks a lot for joining us with your thoughts. We have to take a break. Back in a minute. The markets aren't going anywhere. I guess they're waiting and watching for the Finance Ministry to clarify.